Knife making is almost meditative for me. There's a lot of passion behind it. There's a lot of hard work behind it. And it's not just something that you kind of just brush off like, oh, this is just a knife. People hands touch this knife. People pour their passion and their soul inside of these products.
The art of blacksmithing has a very long history. Our notion of what it means to be civilized is to have metallurgy, to have the ability to transform the natural world.
When somebody uses my knife, I want them to say, damn! Golly, this is a badass knife. Come here, let me show y'all something. Well, let me tell you what Quentin Middleton does. I make knives for a living. Who knew? I am from St. Stephen, South Carolina. That's maybe about an hour away from Charleston, South Carolina. We are basically in my backyard. This is my studio. This is where it all goes down, where every last one of my knives is made. Why does Quentin Middleton make knives? Because I love it. It's just a boyish love from watching fantasy movies like Star Wars, He-Man, Conan. Like, it just piqued my imagination.
I've watched him go from making kung fu weapons out of lawnmower blades to chef's knives to being a serious businessman, like a force to be reckoned with.
I love color. I love pops of color. I love the reds, the blues, the greens. That's my personality. And I like my knives to look sexy. The knife we'll be making today will be an 8-inch chef knife. It will be Damascus.
Damascus steel is a set of techniques that involve the layering of iron upon iron upon iron, creating this more complex and more durable structure.
I will be using 2 types of steel. It basically is going to give you contrast between shiny and dark. You will see a bunch of swirls in it. That's what make it pretty. First, I'm measuring each one of these pieces of steel. Each one of them is cut at 5 inches. And then I'm chopping up in the chop saw. I take it next to my grinder and I'm cleaning the surface of the billets. So when I put it in the forge, it has a clean surface to adhere to. I'm gonna stack about 10 layers and I'm gonna weld it together. Now we're gonna put it into a forge. And the forge is about 2,300 degrees. And basically that's not molting, but very close. So I need it to stick to each other. I'm looking for a particular color. The color I'm looking for is like a bright yellowish orange. So once it reaches the color I'm looking for, it's time to pull it out because I don't want it to burn or melt. Next, we're going to use the hydraulic press and we're going to compress it. So this is now kneading the steel like dough. And I'm not going to initially just chomp down on it. I'm doing light touches. And once we do that and we get a long enough piece, we're gonna cut it in half. The piece that I cut off, I'm gonna stack it to the other piece, building up those layers. And we're gonna do the same thing again. Put it in the forge, heat it up, draw it out on the hydraulic press, and I'm gonna cut it again. So basically now we have a great starting point to what the knife is gonna look like.
Historically, blacksmithing played an important role in the formation of African American identity. During the transatlantic slave trade, which carried more than 12 million Africans, many hundreds and even thousands of blacksmiths were among them. They came with their knowledge of ironworking and smelting and forging and their ritual power. They were remarkable individuals and they became leaders in the community. So on plantations, they might have been responsible for shoeing horses, for keeping the operations of the industrial complex going. They not only forged iron shackles, but they forged the weapons that account for the resistance to slavery. For example, we know that African blacksmiths played a tremendous role in the Haitian Revolution. Sometime around the late 19th century, science began to transform and professionalize ironworking. In that process, many African Americans were left out of the picture. They were being excluded and discriminated against in the workplace. They still played a critical role, and their labor and their expertise was really important to the rise of many different industries. Today, blacksmithing has become an important art form, and African Americans have a very important role in the contemporary community of artisans. They have persisted in part because they stayed longer in rural communities. So African American blacksmiths have really remained critical to the persistence of these techniques of forging by hand exquisitely beautiful objects out of iron.
So next I'll be grinding the knife to shape. I take a template and I lay it onto the billet, and then now I'm cutting the excess away. So basically the whole perimeter of the knife. After I cut the excess away, now it's time to normalize it and heat treat it. We did all this hard work in the beginning to get the width and the thickness we want, so it has a lot of stress inside of it. So I need to basically massage. Basically, it need to go into the sauna. So that's what normalizing is. Heating it to its critical temperature, and for this instance, is about 1500 degrees. And then I have to quickly dip it in oil. This process is called quenching. This process is allowing the grain structures inside the steel to realign and mesh together, and I need it to stay that way. So that's what the quenching process does. Now, since I quenched it in oil, this knife is so brittle that I can take a hammer or throw it on the ground, it will shatter in 1,000 pieces. So now I need to put it in an oven at 400 degrees for a 2-hour span, allowing it to soften just slightly, but still be hard enough to hold an edge. And that is the key point of a knife. It needs to be able to hold an edge and stay sharp for a very long time. As a child, I was very adventurous. I was a loner. I would play in the woods, make my own bow and arrows, slingshots. I would take tubing off my swing set and flatten it with a hammer and make my own sword. There are not many, probably 5 or 6 black knife makers that I can think of right now. And it was very hard because it's a white dominated area. And a lot of people didn't want to teach me starting out. I worked at a local mall and I sold knives and cigars and swords. And a man came in one day, his name is Jason Knight.
Quentin was behind the counter and he knew what he was talking about. He knew all the knives, he knew what they were made out of, he knew where they were from. He was very interested in the whole idea of making knives.
And he started telling me that he make knives for a living. And as a 17-year-old boy, like my eyes like brighten up like, can you teach me? He's making me nervous.
Why? I'm just
He's my teacher. Gotta make sure I do it right.
He would come to my shop and he would show me what he made and I would give him some pointers and then he would go back and work on that again. And one day he came over and he said, God told me to make chef's knives.
I was following suit behind Jason, making hunting knives, swords, and the fantasy movie swords. And then I had a dream. I'm very big in my faith, and the Holy Spirit told me plainly, make chef knives. And I woke up, I was like, that makes sense.
Probably within 8 months, every chef in Charleston had a chef's knife in their hands that Quentin had the guts to go out there and say, I want to let you try this knife out and see what you think. And he built a whole business around that. That's the exciting thing, that's the fun thing, is to watch something grow from a little seed and watch it become awesome. I love the guy. He's my friend, he's my brother. I want him to be the rock star knife maker that he is.
So now next what we'll be doing, we'll finish doing the bevel grinding, basically getting it to a sharp point. So I'm grinding it from the thickness that it is now to basically down to 0 on the edge. I don't measure anything, so it's all about feel. I've been doing this 18 years, and it's muscle memory. I'm constantly checking it, making sure that my grinds are straight and consistent, make sure that everything flows well. And then I will be putting it inside a developer. Right now, it looks silver, so you really don't see the patterns yet until I put it in this ferric chloride. Now you're about to see what we all wanted to see, the pattern. The twists and the turns and the curls and the swooshes, and like, doesn't it look sexy? Now here comes the heavy part for me. Adding the handle. The handle material is going to be oak. But what's so special about this oak came from a plantation. This plantation is called Middleton's Place. We are currently at Middleton's Place Plantation, maybe 20 minutes away from downtown Charleston. And my last name is Middleton, so you know the deal. My ancestors were here. They worked this land. They bled here, they died here. They may were beaten here. They may were hung here. This oak tree is basically a live oak, or in Charleston, angel oak. This tree has been here since slavery time. The directors over Middleton Place Plantation, we had this little project. I made some oyster knives for them, and they were kind enough to gift me some of the wood that fell off this tree. And that's the handle I use for this knife. What I want to do is build off broken pieces. I'm taking something that's barbaric, that's a stain on America's history, and building off of that in my own way. This wood is basically a block, and I'm going to cut it to shape. I want to create a chemical and a mechanical bond. The chemical bond is the epoxy. The mechanical bond is a screw, and I can screw the handle to the blade. After we let the glue dry, we will grind the perimeter of the handle. Basically, I'm just trying to get that Coke bottle shape. I just want it to be smooth. I want it to be almost like a car. The lines need to fit, they need to flow just right. And I want to add a sealer. Now you're about to see the rings of the oak. You can almost count it and see how old this tree really was. Now it's time to sharpen the knife. And I'm paying very close attention on the angle, making sure that it's not too steep or not too shallow. Now you're seeing how sexy this knife looked. I am proud to put my name on it. So now we'll be putting my maker's mark on it, my logo. I use a laser engraver, and we'll be allowing the laser to engrave my logo inside this knife. Growing up, my granddad told me your name is everything. To put your name on something, that means you stand by it, just like your handshake. You stand by your handshake. Now it's time to box it up, wrap it up, and ship it out. Since this one is so special and there's so much emotion inside this one, it'll probably be around $2,000. People ask me a lot, how long does it take to make a knife? I answer that two ways. If I have everything on hand, I can make that knife in 8 hours. And the second way I answer that is kind of snobbish, 18 years. And you have to look off at it. The time and the mistakes that I've made and all the blood, sweat, and tears I put into my craft, it feels like second nature to me. Growing up as a boy, you never really hear like you're doing a good job. As a Southern man, you more like go to school, go to work hard, provide for your family. But to build this knife in honor of my ancestors, this saying job well done. I built my brand, I've built this company, and what I'm hearing in my spirit, what I'm hearing in my inner man is saying I'm proud of you. That's what I feel.